Ava DuVernay is at it again. She is claiming that racism and sexism are to blame for audiences being more excited about Oppenheimer than her Isabel Wilkerson biopic Origin. Yes, you read that right. She is blaming racism and sexism for people being more excited about a movie about a man who made the atomic bomb that literally changed the way the world thinks, opposed to someone that probably no one has ever heard of. I've never even heard of this person, Isabel Wilkerson. But let's get into this here. Reporter Jackson asks this question to DuVernay: what does it take to get the audience to watch a movie like Origin? She goes on and says, because midway through I realized this is a process film, a movie about someone making something I just had a conversation about, she said, which I loved. And I was frustrated because it feels when there's process films about women and people of color, people are not as intrigued. I don't know that this is a fair question to ask you, but I'm curious what you make of the way to get the audience in the door, because it is complicated when asking people to watch material that is challenging. I think this is absolutely, utterly ridiculous question. I think there's plenty of great biopic films about famous black people or quote-unquote people of color, as the reporter here uses, and people watch them all the time. Jackie Robinson 42 comes to mind. People enjoyed that, and it's a great film as well. But anyways, this is what DuVernay had to say in response to that question. She said, "You're right. It's challenging to watch a process film about a man making a bomb, Oppenheimer. He's a man who was trying to do something and couldn't quite describe it to anybody else, but he knew it. Isabel is a woman who knows something and can't quite describe it, but she knows it, and she's going to find it. You'll sit through 3 hours of his process. Will you sit through 2 hours of her process? I think that is the only proposition. It's not talking about the merit of the films. It's talking about the very idea of following a woman through an intellectual process, an intellectual exercise. Then you make that a black person. Then you make that a black woman. Is it valid enough for you to go on that journey with her?" Clearly, making implications there of racism and sexism. She then concluded her thoughts on the topic, saying, "If you're looking at films, like she said, or women talking, there's a real question as to what it takes to center that voice and that narrative. We've been trained that the center is not usually the center. That voice usually is off-center, or the minor character are not usually in this movie. I'm excited to be making work at a time where you have Nomadland, and you have She Said, and you have women talking, and these women are being centered in these ways. It's about an intellectual as well as emotional pursuit, and they are the center of the story. I hope that Origin joins that canon of films." So it's absolutely hilarious here, after she claims racism and sexism, in not so much as many words, then she goes on and is like, "Oh, look, there's all these other movies that do this thing, and people are actually interested in them, and they're winning all these awards." It's like, you're an absolute hypocrite. You can't even like defend your argument, because you're undermining it literally in like the next 2 sentences. I mean, these people are like, they do this all the time. If you actually listen to what they're saying, they undermine their own arguments usually right after they make an argument. It's just utterly ridiculous. I'm just so sick of this stuff. Ava DuVernay should be run out of Hollywood. She's absolutely despicable. Her shows are constantly bombing. As Wrinkle in Time bombed. She did that CW show. I can't even remember what it was. That Brian Michael Bendis adaptation bombed, canceled after 1 season. I mean, everything she does is just absolute failure. I can't believe she's still there. If there was actually a meritocracy in Hollywood, she would no longer be there at all. She would be doing something very different than making propaganda movies to influence the minds of Americans.
Subscribe for more.